Hi, and welcome to my channel. My name is Rachel Tintle, and I am the owner and artist behind The Creative Siren. I specialize in making sculpted stainless steel tumblers, and I'm here to share with all of you how to do that. This is my first ever video, so I'm super excited to be here, and I'm so happy that all of you guys could join me. And because it's the holidays, I thought we would start with something fun and something really festive. This is definitely a favorite of mine, and it's become a fan favorite. So yay, no mug. I know so many of you guys have been waiting for this one. He's so much fun to make. And what I love about him the most is that you can dress him up, you can dress him down. Here I added a poinsettia just to make him extra jolly. But, you know, later on for Valentine's Day, you can add hearts, you can add a 4-leaf clover for St. Patrick's Day. The sky's the limit. He's super versatile. And just ultimately he's just so cute. I adore him. So, I guess without further ado, let's jump right in. Okay, first I just wanted to show a quick overview of all of the tools that we'll be using today on our little gnome mug. First is a pre-sanded 14-ounce stainless steel mug. I have pre-sanded it with final sand, which I find it to be the quickest and easiest way to prep your cup. Just wet your mug and add a dollop of final sand and then scrub it with the scouring pad that is included with your order. Super quick, super easy. Next is the polymer clay of your choice. I personally like to use super sculpey, but obviously it's completely up to you as to what polymer clay that you want to use. Next is just a hobby knife, super easy, and a ball tool. Ball tools usually have two sides, a smaller ball and a bigger ball. It's completely up to you which side you prefer to use. I like to use the larger side. Next is a chiseled silicone tool. We'll use this later on for more detail. And then a pointed silicone tool. We'll use this for smoothing out those edges. And finally, you'll want an acrylic roller. You don't want anything that's a different plastic that the polymer clay might eat, or wood, because the polymer clay will actually seep into the wood. So acrylic is usually your best option. After I've sanded my mug, I do like to tape the tops and bottoms. This is completely a personal preference of mine. If you don't want to tape your tops and bottoms and want to take your design all the way to the top or the bottom, that's completely up to you. This is just what I like to do for these mugs. So after you've prepped your cup, you're going to want to knead your clay for a good 2 to 3 minutes. This is an extremely vital part of working with clay. You want it to be soft and elastic to touch. Kneading your clay also allows the polymers within the clay to activate so it cures and bakes properly. Now for the purposes of this video, I have pre-kneaded this clay. Once you're done kneading your clay, just grab a small bit and start rolling it between the palms of your hands. We're kind of creating like a round dome shape, which will eventually just be the start of our gnome's nose. Once you get it to the size that you like, you're going to start adding it to your mug. Make sure that it's a good distance between the handle and the other side so that it's even. Right here you'll see that it looks pretty bulbousy, but we're going to flatten that out so that the edge of the clay will meet with the seam of the cup. You'll also want to go ahead and push down on the top of the nose so that it doesn't stick out too much, just so it gives it a really natural nose-like curvature. We're going for button nose, not witch's nose. So when you've gotten your nose to the look that you'd like, we're gonna start pulling a piece of clay and rolling it out to start forming the beginnings of his beard. So we're just gonna roll them out into these long snakes. My best advice is to start from the middle and kind of roll out, and that way the clay kind of rolls, you know, in an even fashion. You'll want the clay pieces to be about 1/4 of an inch thick. If it's a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller, that's okay. We're going to be blending all of these strands later on. So go ahead and take your little snake and start putting it off to the side of the nose. I like to work from the right side over. That's just a personal preference, but I make it a little bit above half of the nose because it'll eventually be covered by the hat that we're going to put over it. So if you go a little too high, it doesn't really matter. So just gently place these, get it down to the length that you want, and then go ahead and take your hobby knife and trim it wherever you feel comfortable. I will trim mine right at the tape line since I am taping off my edges. And just kind of continue this process until you get the beard to the width that you'd like. So we'll move left to right on his right side, and then we'll do the same thing on the other side until we kind of get a nice full beard. You'll start to notice that maybe it's not super straight when you're putting these on, and that's okay. It gives it a more natural look to your beard. So if there's gaps, we can always fill those in with little bits of clay. But it doesn't need to be super straight. For some reason, I always find that my strands tend to go a little diagonal, and that's completely normal. Now when we get to this middle part here, just make sure that you push the strands of clay up about as close to the nose that you can. It doesn't have to be, you know, quite in it because we'll blend all of that, but get it as close as you can. It just makes less work for you later when it's time to blend. Now see here, I do have a little bit of a gap, and that's okay. So we're just gonna cut a little bit of clay and just rip it off here and then just kind of stick it there. It doesn't really matter if it overlaps or if it looks unsightly, because ultimately we're gonna be blending all of this so it looks seamless. So now that we've placed all of our snaky snakes and made our beard, we're gonna grab our chiseled tool to start texturizing our little Gnomie's beard. So just apply equal pressure and lightly drag in a downward motion. You'll also want to take your chisel and drag diagonally in both directions. This coarsens up the clay and gives it a much more natural look to his beard. I personally like this technique because it kind of makes the gnome look a little bit more rugged. I don't know about you, but I like their beards to look a little like they're coarse and curly and, you know, all that good stuff. So right here at the nose, you can take your silicone tip tool and you can just kind of press those ends of the beard straight into it. I started using that chiseled tool and it just doesn't do it as well as the regular tip tool. This glides really smoothly and you can meet the beard seamlessly with the rest of the nose. And now I'm just finishing up the rest of the texture for our little Gnomie's beard. You'll just want to do this nice and evenly throughout this entire section. So now that we're done with his beard, just grab a soft bristled brush and comb over his beard to get the little flakes of polymer clay off that will have accrued from texturizing. So now that his beard is done, we are going to move on to the rest of his bottom half. We're going to start adding his shirt back here. So take your clay, again, make sure that it has been kneaded for a good couple of minutes. And we're just gonna start rolling it out. It doesn't really matter in like what shape it develops, because we're gonna blend the whole shirt together, so it'll just be kind of one big seamless piece. When you're done rolling this out, you'll wanna rub your fingers over it and make sure that you don't feel too many bumps, and you'll be able to feel whether the clay is even or not. So take your clay, and I will push it up against the seam of the beard, and so that they meet up real seamlessly, real nicely. And this is kind of where a good point where you can grab your silicone tip tool and you can help push those edges together so that they meet and look really cohesive. And now you'll just flatten the rest of the clay onto the cup. Over here you'll notice that I didn't quite roll it out long enough, but that's completely okay. We will cut off the excess here and we'll use the excess to fit that gap, and then we'll blend in any seam lines that have developed. So this is just an extra piece of clay that I took, and we're gonna just cut a slit right here, and that's because of the handle. We wanna be able to fit this piece right in between the handle, and then we'll merge the ends together around the handle. And then you take the other end here and just meet it up real nicely with the other seam of the beard. Now that I have all the seams met together and blended, I'm just gonna cut off the excess on top of here. Right here it looks like I'm probably gonna need to add a little extra piece of clay, but that's okay. Again, we'll just merge and blend. When you're cutting your clay, you want the line of his shirt to meet with the same line as the beard. If it goes a little bit higher, a little bit lower, it's ultimately okay, because again, we will be covering it with what will be his hat. but it just makes it easier if that seam meets all together. So see, I just add a little piece of clay there if you're like me and left a little bit of a gap, and then just blend it with your thumbs. You just kind of gently rub it with your fingers until it's smooth and doesn't have any unsightly seams. Now here, because I did tape off my edges and I've been cutting off my edges, I want to round out all of these edges so that it just doesn't have a really harsh line. It just, in my opinion, just gives it a nicer, cleaner look. And then I do it to the top too, that way when we add the hat to the top, it lays flat. Once that's all done, we're gonna go ahead and again roll out another piece of clay. Again, make sure that you've kneaded it for a couple of minutes. This is going to start to be the top of his hat. We're gonna begin at the bridge of his nose and then work our way outward. So once I've rolled my piece out, I'm gonna actually take my hobby tool and I'm going to cut a straight edge. Since this is going over the nose, I don't want it to be too lumpy. I want it to be as straight as possible. And we're just gonna lay that right over the top of it and then make sure that the lines of the hat line up so that they're not too wavy or lumpy, and then press that clay over the top of his nose so that you see the silhouette of his nose underneath the clay. Once we've done that, just go ahead and trim the excess clay so that we can use it for the rest of his hat. Mine's being a little bit stubborn. That's okay. There we go. And then I didn't get it all the way to the top, so I can just actually blend those lines to meet the top of my tape line. So I just take my excess clay and I meet it with the same edge that I left the other piece. Because again, we can cut those lines and then blend them so that there's not a noticeable seam. Push them together as close as you can, and then just smoothly blend it together with your thumbs. This is kind of a gentle process. You don't want to push too hard, otherwise you'll leave fingerprints, and if you push too soft, you won't really get anywhere. I'm just using my silicone tip tool to blend in that edge since I can't really get my fingers in there safely. And then I do kind of a combination of the two all the rest of the way. And now we're rolling out the last little piece of clay that we'll need for his hat. I've made this one a little bit longer so that I can fit the rest of the bear tumbler. Again, I'm cutting a straight line so that I can meet it with the rest of his hat, the same seams, and just matching it up as best as I can. And just as we did with the bottom, we're going to cut a line with our hobby tool so that we can fit the clay nicely around the handle of the mug. And then go ahead and trim any excess clay that you have. And then we'll just finish blending and merging all of those seams. Now that the hat is done, you're going to take another piece of clay and we're just going to kind of pull a small piece off and form a triangle shape. This is going to go underneath the curvature of the handle, but it's going to be part of the hat, the hangover part of his hat. So we're just going to stick it right here, right underneath that curvature. It looks kind of like a support joint. And then we're going to round out that edge there. We don't want it to be straight because we want it to be comfortable on our hands when we're holding the mug. If it's too thick, you know, our hands won't be able to fit in that little cubby hole. So just curve it out. Sometimes I like to grab the handle to make sure that it's comfortable for my hand. And then with any excess clay, you can kind of drag it up and over the handle so that we can blend it in, because ultimately we're going to cover this whole handle. And go ahead and grab your silicone tip tool to merge those ends down at the very bottom so that it, you know, gives it a very seamless look. This is the hat, so it's supposed to look like one big cohesive piece, and that silicone tip tool will definitely help you achieve that look. Right about here, we're going to start covering the rest of the handle. Just take a small piece of clay and flatten it between your index finger and your thumb, and then just start piling it onto the cup, pushing it down and blending it as you go. Now around here, you'll start to notice that it's kind of lumpy because you're adding all these separate little sheets of clay on here. For me, I personally like that. I feel like it gives the gnome hat a little bit of an extra texture, because realistically, if we were all wearing droopy hats, they wouldn't be perfectly straight. They'd be kind of lumpy and curvy. So I just have fun with it, and you know, I leave it to be a little bit bumpy. Once you've covered your entire handle, you're going to want to grab your silicone tip tool and push those pieces of clay down together at the very bottom so that you no longer see any more of the stainless steel mug. You don't want to blend this part in all of the way, because this is the handle is the hat and down below is his shirt. So technically it's two different pieces, but you also don't want there to be too many unsightly seams where you piece together your clay. So that's what you're blending, but you're not blending the shirt and the hat together. You want to leave a noticeable seam as if they're two different pieces, or as if the hat is laying on top of the shirt. So once we've smoothed all of that out, we're going to grab another piece of clay to make the tail end of our little gnomie's hat. So again, we're going to make a little triangle, but we're going to elongate our triangle since it's supposed to be the very tip of the hat. So once you've made it the desired size and length that you want, you'll put it down at the base of the handle and just start blending all of that in. I like to elongate mine a little bit more once it's placed here so that it gives it a really like thin tip. And then take your silicone tool and merge the base of the handle with the base of your triangle so that it looks like one long cohesive hat. Now that you're done with your hat, we're gonna take the rest of your clay and we're just gonna ball it up. Again, rubbing it in a circular motion between the palms of your hand to create that flat dome circular shape like we did with the nose of the gnome. But this part's going to be the little cotton ball at the very tail of his hat. So you want to kind of flatten it out. You can make the size of this little cotton ball end any size that you want, really. You can make it super small, you can make it really large if that's what you desire. I go for more of a medium sized. I mean, I guess a little bit bigger than a quarter. That's just my personal preference. So once you get it to the size that you like, you'll lay it down and you'll overlap it with the tip of the hat just by a hair. And then just as we did with the nose, we're going to meet those seams. We'll just push down the very ends so that the seam of the ball meets with the seam of our little gnome's shirt. So now it's time to take our ball tool and we're just going to kind of poke at this little fluff ball to create these peaks and valleys that you would normally see on, you know, a little fluff ball. So we're not just creating dots, we're just overlapping those dots. And you'll see what I mean once you do it. Just kind of go over each one of those. There's no rhyme or reason to it, but you'll start to see what I mean when I say peaks and valleys. And of course, just keep doing that until you're happy with the overall look and you've covered the entirety of our little disc here. And don't forget to get the very edges of your little disc here so that it has a seamless puffy ball look to it. Once you've finished texturizing your puff ball, we're going to go ahead and start adding detail to our gnome. This is by far my favorite part, just because you really start to see him come alive with all the little details. So we're going to start by rolling out little snakes, just like we did with the beard. These ones, of course, are now going to be thinner than the ones of the beard. So I'm thinking like about 1/8 of an inch, maybe even smaller. So once you get it to the desired size that you'd like, we're going to take a small piece and we're going to drape it over the bridge of our gnome's nose. It's going to look kind of like the start of a little rainbow right up there. And then you'll cut off the tail end just right at the bridge, like right before it really starts to curve down. From here, you'll just kind of pat it down so that it sticks to the rest of the clay, and grab your silicone tip tool and we're going to merge those edges all over again. So the very ends here are the most important. You kind of want to give it a look of it dragging down so it doesn't have to merge completely, but the lines that you do want to merge really, really well are the side lines of your little snake. You want them to look really cohesive and really seamless on the bridge of that nose, as if it really is a wrinkle in the hat. Once I'm done smoothing out that top wrinkle in his nose, I'm going to add another one. It's going to be slightly shorter than that first one, and I push it, in front of it. So just a hair shorter on either side, and then we're going to again smooth it out. I will usually add anywhere between 2 or 3 of these wrinkles, but if you would like to add more, have at. I think that's what's really cool about this little guy, is that the details are really what makes it. And so if you want to have more wrinkles in his little hat, go for it. If not, you know, if you want to go the less is more route, that's okay too. He still looks cute either way. Okay, so now with those done, we're going to move on and add more wrinkles up to the top of his hat right here, right where you put your thumb. So again, I add anywhere between 2 or 3 little wrinkles here, and it's the same idea. The longer piece in the back, and then it goes shorter in the front. And we'll just smooth those in a downward motion. And just keep adding those wrinkles and smoothing them out until you're happy with the overall look of the top of his hat. Now once we're done with all of those little details, it's time to smooth out our gnome. So just take a little bit of rubbing alcohol. I just like to pour a tiny little bit into the cap of it, and then I barely dip the tip of my finger into the rubbing alcohol, and then I'll smooth it over the top of my clay. This will get rid of any unsightly bumps, any fingerprints that you happen to leave behind, but just be careful not to use too much, as alcohol does eat away at polymer clay. It also dries it out really quickly. So you just want to use just the littlest bit and then rub it in until it's dry. Here I'm just smoothing out any lines that I may have created while I was texturizing the beard, since the alcohol helps me smooth all of that out. You'll also want to be really careful if you start to put the alcohol around the detail lines that you just worked so hard on, because you don't want those to go away. You just want to smooth them out. Now that that's all done, you can go ahead and start trimming any excess clay. We're just about done. So since over here I have chosen to tape off my bottoms, I have a little bit of extra clay hanging over from when we texturized the beard. So I'm just gonna cut that off so it gives it a nice even line down at the bottom. And last but not least, right before we put it in the oven, you have to be sure, if you did tape off your ends, to take that tape off. That tape probably shouldn't go in the oven. So just make sure that that comes off. If your edges peel up, like mine did a little bit here, go ahead and just push it right back down. It won't hurt it. Once you've finished flattening down all those edges, then your gnome is ready to go to the oven. Just be sure to follow the directions on the package of polymer clay so it cures correctly. Once your gnome is done baking in the oven and has cooled completely, you can go ahead and start to paint him. I've just chosen 3 colors here. I have a metallic green, a bright red, and a white color for his beard. You'll want to be sure that all the paints that you use are acrylic paints only, as any other paint can not mix well with the polymer clay. And there you have it. Our gnome is ready for epoxy. When it comes to your epoxy, be sure to add a thin layer throughout the whole mug. You don't want anything on too thick, otherwise it's a breeding ground for bubbles. And you'll notice that I do have a counterbalance here, and you'll need something of that kind to offset the weight that your handle adds to your turner arm. I just use electrical tape. Then hit it real quick with a heat gun and you're ready to go. After letting your mugs sit for 8 to 12 hours on their turner, they are ready to go and they shine so beautifully. You can dress them up with a little poinsettia like I did there, or leave them plain. Either way, they're adorable. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you like this video. Let me know what you think in the comments below. See you next time. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Oh, this is really bad. We're gonna start over. Okay. The Christmas Gnome Tumbler. So he's oh gosh, why can't I speak? My name is Rachel Tintle and I am the owner and artist behind the Creative Siren. Oh shit, I'm gonna sneeze. Some of you know, I thought I'd give you guys a little compose yourself, bitch. I've been known in the community for a little while now. Why am I giving you my credentials? Nobody gives a shit about my credentials. I'm gonna get this one of these days. I swear I will. I don't know what's the matter. What's the matter with you? What's the matter with you? Great, it's fantastic. Let's just tuck that little fucker back in there. All right, and we'll try this again.